So here we are again for our final bit on how to face death without fear and how to help others do the same. Why should we want to do that? So that we can get a decent rebirth, so we can carry on practicing our spiritual path. That's the reason, only reason, one reason, that's it. No other, that's it, very simple, not complicated. And then the reason for that is that we can become enlightened, not lose the plot. So we can keep moving. And this inconvenience with having to die and get another life, it's a drag, isn't it? So make it as easy as possible. So we sing our little prayer, expresses refuge, and the second line, our bodhicitta motivation for doing this. Sangye Chodam, Sokye Chognam La, Jantu Baru, Dagi Kyapsu Chi, Dagi Chernyen, give her sonam ki, Drola Penche, Sangye, Drupa Sho, Sangye Chodam, Sokye Chognam La, Jantu Baru, Dagi Kyapsu Chi, Dagi Chernyen, give her sonam ki, Drola Penche, Sangye, Drupa Sho. And what I said is, the first two lines, we rely on the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, remind ourselves of our refuge. And the second line stating our bodhicitta motivation. Why we're doing this activity of listening, so that we can become a Buddha to benefit others. Programming our mind in those thoughts. All the thoughts count. We don't go in one ear and out the other. Which is how we think of thoughts. We don't think thoughts have meaning in our culture. It's so bizarre, you know. We just don't really think thoughts have meaning. It's quite astonishing. The Buddha is the exact opposite. Every thought is what produces the person we become. We are our own creators. It's very, I mean, to think of it this way. It's so tasty. Okay, so what we've been doing is going through Lama Zopa's book about death, what it is, how it happens, taking the Vajrayana position as well as the sutra, and then the chronological order, you know, parts 3, 4, and 5. What to do the months and weeks before, what to do the days before, hours before, at the time of death, at the time breath stops, at the time the mind leaves, and then the days after. It's like chronological. And then the back part of the book, like 2/3 really, is all the 87 practices, all numbered in order. So it's a handbook, practical. Yeah. So any questions from yesterday, day before, day before, day before? Questions. We covered everything roughly. We can go to more, just mention a few more practices to do once the person's cremated or buried. I mentioned them briefly, we'll say those again. But are there any questions and discussions you'd like to have with me on Zoom or in the room?
Carol?
Yes, darling.
Is there ever any reason, any acceptable reason to kill?
It's not a question of is there any reason to kill. That's not the question. I know that's your question, but from this perspective, that's not the question. The question is, if you do kill, it needs to be for the benefit of that person. And that means it has to be something that helps their mind continue to purify their karma or get a better rebirth. It has to be a good outcome for the person. So who has got that wisdom? Then that's why we don't kill. Bodhisattvas, a bodhisattva who's a holy being, who, even not forget a Buddha, but holy beings who have gone beyond ego, who have incredible clarity, incredible wisdom, incredible compassion, and see long term, can easily kill, not a problem, if they see there's some benefit to the person. Just like tough love. If you're a mum and your naughty child is not doing what you said and you have to shout at them for the 4th time, no more chocolate, go to your room. You know it's coming from compassion. They think you're being mean. No, you're not. So it's extreme tough love. That's the only reason. That's the only time. Do you understand my point? You see, that's a Buddhist answer. It's not a question of, is there a reason I can kill? It's not a question of that. It's the only time you do any action is if it's for the benefit of that person. That's the bottom line. Does that make sense? You look puzzled though. Are you sure?
Well,
can you hear it?
I'm thinking of the animals that are put down and
killed. Is the word killed?
Yes, killed.
What's the question there?
And, well,
what's the question? Go on. Good. It's good. It's good.
How do I know?
You don't, because you haven't got the wisdom. That's why you don't do it. That's the point. If you have a cyanide and an aspirin, but you don't remember which is which, you will not take a risk and give it to me and have me die in agony and then say, oh, I meant well. If you don't have wisdom, you don't do it. If you don't know the consequences of an action, we all know this in daily life, we're super intelligent, then don't do it. It's really simple. The reason, I mean, you've got to take on board the view of reincarnation here. If there's no view of reincarnation, then don't worry about it. Kill everybody. Who cares? You mean well, it's good enough. It's, you know, I'm being sarcastic. This is the Buddhist context. It's got to change your perspective, change the assumptions in the mind. So you're thinking because your cat is suffering, that's your point, isn't it?
It's an
You must
act of
kill it.
mercy.
Yeah, but honey, child in suffering could be worse in another realm. That's the part. That's why you're being puzzled, because we're not used to thinking of reincarnation in lower realms. That's the only reason behind it. Buddha's asserting there are countless experiences in realms of existence that are 1 billion times more suffering than this one, or 1 billion times more suffering than an animal birth. That's the reason behind it. That could be a consequence. Because you don't have the wisdom to know exactly what's on your grandma's mind or exactly what's on the animal's mind at the time you kill them. Because you don't have the wisdom to know with confidence that a karmic seed that is virtuous will ripen at that time, that will ensure they get a better rebirth. If so, please kill me now. I'm very happy. I appreciate your kindness. Can you see the point? That's the context here. Because the suffering that could come is worse. You're putting them from the frying pan into the fire. Like my headache is terrible. But you don't have any wisdom. You have no idea if it's cyanide. Oh, but I mean well. That's what we do with our animals every day. Oh, I meant well. We think because we mean well and we stop their headache because we don't factor in, and we don't have to. This is only Buddha's view. I mean, he's saying it's true. But we're not factoring in the possibility of a far worse rebirth, far more suffering after the suffering of the present. That's the point. That's the context. That's the framework. You see what I'm saying? So it's a tough one because we can't. I mean, it's a struggle to even think of reincarnation as a possibility, and if it is to think this way, it's very difficult for our minds because it's not our culture, is it? Yeah.
So how to think about a soldier in an army in a war? How to think about the actions of a soldier in a war?
What do you mean by how to think about it? You think about it, the person think about it? You mean you want me to analyze? So what's the question? Ask another way. What's the question? Where's Myrnie? Can you go to my table, my desk, and you'll see a glasses case?
Okay.
Can you bring it to me? Thank you.
Okay.
Go on. Ask the question another way. I know what you mean, but it's good you ask the question in an appropriate way.
The person finds themselves as a soldier sent to a war.
Yeah, go on. Then.
And are they doing their duty by killing?
Keep asking questions because that's not the right question. I mean, I'm happy to answer. I don't want to answer that. Get to the question you really want to ask. The question you want to ask is, what's the karma of killing in a war?
Okay.
I mean, that's all you're asking. What's the karma of killing? Well, let's just go out to this morning, talk about karma then. Remind us of this. Because did you see the one of karma, when we read the Tibetan texts, because the view of karma has been in their culture, has been in Tibetan culture, coming from Indian culture for 2,000 years already. So for them, it's a total given. Thank you, darling. It's a total given. So in other words, because for us, the materialist view of brain science is a given, we don't explain it all the time. We speak from that perspective. So when you read the Tibetan teachings, because it's coming for people who take as karma as a given, you see my point here, that there's a lot of blunt, we need background. So when we talk about it, we have to talk about it to try and show it's a possibility, because it's brand new to us. So we've got to understand karma and how it works, the bare bones, at least the minimum principles of this law. And this is the part that's tough for us, because when we hear about karma, we just hear it as an alternative to, Christianity or Islam, when they say don't do this and don't do this, and if you do it, you're naughty and you get punished. That's how we hear it. We can't help but hear it that way. That's why karma is so shocking to us, so shocking to us. So, what happened here? Wrong way. So, let's talk about karma then. Because without karma, without the view of karma, the whole of Buddhism would collapse into a heap of incoherent nonsense. As a fact, it's completely implicit, utterly within the framework of everything Buddha teaches. Hugely important, But of course, if you go to a Zen center, you won't even hear the word karma. And we just think sometimes probably something made up by the hippies in the 1960s, you know, I mean, or reincarnation, which is so weird for us. We have so many deep assumptions in our mind about the philosophical materialist view, or so many deep assumptions about the creator view. They're the only views we know. They're the only alternatives in our world. So the Buddhist one, we just think it's a variation of the creator one, except there's no God, but we don't put it together. We don't join the dots. It's hugely important to get our head around it, which means you have to unpack it, analyze it. So, okay, as far as Buddha is concerned, consciousness is why the whole business of consciousness has been beginningless and endless, which is the nuttiest thing we've ever heard. The option is, you see, you can argue the one thing that philosophical materialists and religious philosophers, meaning creator religions, agree upon, is that we come from someone else. So if you're a Christian or a Muslim, you come from God. If you're a materialist, you come from mummy and daddy. So, I mean, I know I say weird words, but from the Buddhist perspective, this is the wackiest thing you could ever think. It's like a demented idea that someone can make a person. Someone can give you love and compassion and kindness and be good at music. It's the weirdest idea for the Buddha. Because he doesn't say it like that. It's just demented, peculiar, bizarre. It's not possible, not viable, impossible. Mummy and daddy give us a body, that's evident. There's no role in Buddha at all. He ain't a creator. There's no such concept of creator. We don't need creating. So Buddha's analysis, based on his observation, remember this, you didn't get it from the sky. Like I always quote that scientist in New Zealand asking me years ago, who revealed the teachings to the Buddha? That's the assumption we have about religious philosophy. It's come from on high. It's so deep in our bones, that assumption. It's come from on high, it's revelation, can't be proved, and it's coming from the concept of a creator, and can't be proved. That's an assumption we have so deep, you know. Not at all Buddha's view, it's the opposite. So when this fellow said that question, who revealed it to the Buddha, I said, well, would you ask who revealed E equals mc squared to Einstein? Of course, he laughed, everyone laughed. And we all laugh now, it's a joke to think, because we know what's called science is coming from an intelligent person observing things and coming and then working it out and you know, and then proving it and then codifying it and then presenting it. These are my findings, Einstein says. These are my findings. He did not have a dream or a vision. It wasn't revealed to him. He's not speculating. He's observed it. He presents it and he says, you want to prove this too, honey child? Here's my methodology. Buddha's exactly like that. I mean exactly, but it's so shocking to think this way. So what he's saying is he has observed consciousnesses, minds are not physical. They don't have a beginning or end because the law of cause and effect runs the universe. And the law of cause and effect here is known as the law of karma, just how they call it, shorthand, you know. The law of cause and effect runs the universe. So in order to establish, as one time I remember His Holiness was asked, how do you prove reincarnation? He said, oh, it's easy. He said, once you've established the nature of a thing now, then the substantial cause of it is the second before. So in that sense, the Buddha would say that you can't find the first moment of anything. You can't find the first moment of this thing. If you track back this thing, you'd know that came from this, which came from that, which came from this, which came from that. There's no missing moment, and you keep tracking back, and it's always going to be substantial. It's always going to be physical matter to the subtlest level, the way they talk, but 4 elements. And you get back to the first Big Bang, the Big Bang. And then the question is, what's before that? Well, as His Holiness said in all his conversations, first Big Bang, no problem, just not the first Big Bang, that's all. You can't find, so we all want a first moment. This is one of the big mistakes Buddha says is coming from ego-grasping. It's a misconception that we made up. And Christians teach a lot, I'm not being rude, their main philosophy is how there can be a first cause, capital F, capital C. Not viable for the Buddha, not a possibility. The only conclusion, therefore, is beginninglessness. Like your smarty pants kid at school. Miss, who created God? Be quiet. It's a very good question. It's exactly the correct question. How can you have a first thing? So from this perspective, we then take that view, the assumption, the hypothesis, consciousness not being physical, being subjective cognitive process itself, and its main substantial cause is the moment before it. And the moment before that, and you track that back in an unbroken chain of mental moments, you get back to the first second of conception, and you have to ask the question, yeah, we know egg comes from mummy, sperm from daddy, that's settled. Previous second of your consciousness is a previous moment of itself. hardly difficult conceptually. Just have to hypothesize it first. And so you keep tracking back, but we want a first moment. It's just irrational, Buddha says. As nutty as it sounds, because even as I say your mind's beginning, as I kind of think, oh, that's a bit ridiculous. But it seems logical. So you take that view. So now, the second thing is here, the law that Buddha has observed that runs the universe is a natural law. Now, this is a massive point because we talk about God's law and natural law. And that's when Mr. Galileo, wasn't it? He started being naughty and questioning God. And he probably got burned at the stake, right? He started questioning the dogma of the Catholic Church that was absolute truth then. So he started. And so from that, it seems to me, there's now this massive split between create a religious philosophy, which is you must believe it because you can't prove it. And the other one is now materialism, so-called science. Well, that view of science has been the view of Buddha. Buddha says, by definition, that which exists is cognizable by mind. In fact, the definition of an existent is that which can be cognized by mind. So it's axiomatic for the Buddha that if something exists, it can be, what establishes it as existing is that mind cognizes it. So mind is beginningless, and that's one extra point, but we'll go into that. But the other thing is, the law that runs the universe is the law that runs all minds, or the law within which minds run. That every millisecond what a mind does, says, thinks, says, doesn't, thinks, doesn't, says, whatever a mind thinks, and then what it does with its body and speech on the basis of that, is the process that produces that person now and into countless million future lifetimes. That's called the law of karma. That we produce ourselves. Now, I say this and it's really true, but we don't think it. We know that the main cause of you becoming a musician is you. We know that your mind is what produces a musician. We know that you train your mind, learning the theories really rigorously, really precisely. You learn the theories in your mind, and then slowly your hand plays the piano until you've perfected it. So you create the musician. And we know that everything that goes on in your mind in relation to music, everything that goes on in your mind in relation to music is what produces a musician. So that's called the law of karma, except we don't know that everything that goes on in our mind produces a happy person or suffering person. That's Buddha's expertise. We know how to become a musician, a mathematician, a carpenter. We're geniuses. Buddha's expertise is how to become a happy person, finally an enlightened one. That's his expertise. That's it. That's the law of karma. So the next level of detail is everything that you do, say, and think, do, and say that's labeled negative or non-virtuous, roughly speaking synonymous, is what produces suffering. Suffering experiences, suffering tendencies, and suffering lifetimes. By definition, everything that you think, do, and say that's labeled virtuous or positive, but necessarily is what produces a happy person, happy, good tendencies, experiences, and that's it. That's the detail. It's not a complicated concept. Just have to get our heads around it, and then study it, and then learn it, and then practice it, and then slowly cognize it with our own mind, the truth of it. Just like you can with Einstein. Where Einstein got it is not from the sky, but from his own intelligence. Buddha's the same, exactly the same. It's obvious then because we assume you can't prove reincarnation because we assume the level of cognition, our capacity is what we talk about in neuroscience. No, that's the miniature tip of the iceberg of the capacity of mind. These genius Indians 3,000 years ago, as the Dalai Lama says, were the ones who began the investigation into the nature of self. We thought it was Freud 100 years ago. We're so arrogant. Honestly, you can't imagine the detail, the brilliance and subtlety and brilliance of this that comes from developing the skill of single point of concentration, the skill to enable you to know intimately and with incredible clarity the nature of your own mind, therefore everybody else's mind. So this karma ripens in 4 ways. Our actions ripen in 4 ways. Often I've heard the word karma means action. Not sure if that's right. I don't speak Sanskrit. So everything we think and do and say is an action. So there's 4 ways karma ripens, I've mentioned briefly. One is a type of rebirth, and we've got this whole spectrum of possibilities within samsara. Buddha has observed on this spectrum from intense suffering to the most intense bliss within samsara. Being within samsara implies a being who hasn't yet realized emptiness, who's still got ego grasping, who hasn't gone beyond samsara, who hasn't realized emptiness, who hasn't cut the root of samsara. We haven't discussed that at all here. We might. So within samsara, you've got these a possibility of 6 suburbs to get born in. So depending on the intensity of your virtuous actions, they will ripen as a human birth or a god birth. And god birth's pretty useless because you're so in bliss that you just waste it and tip it down the toilet and get back to the lower realms. Or your intensity of levels of negativity, you get born either an animal, you know, a tiny baby one in the sea, or a big fat one like with a long neck like a giraffe, depends on the karma. A spirit, like a hungry ghost, and many kinds of variations of these ghosts. People all know about ghosts and spirits, you know, that type of being, many kinds of those. Predominantly, animal one is the 3 root delusions. We talk about the three poisons, remember? Buddha talks about ignorance, attachment, and anger, aversion. Well, the predominance of ignorance, animal birth. Predominance of attachment, spirit birth. Predominance of anger, hell birth. So I remember, like I said yesterday, the Vajrayana model with all physical matters made of the 4 elements. So this is the 4 elements. So a hell being is a being who, due to the tendency of negativity, harming and killing and whatever, their mind is, you know, runs like a magnet to this type of rebirth, after say the human one of negativity, and their 4 elements mainly predominantly seems to be would be fire energy, and their mind is conjoined with fire, and their karmic appearances are like nightmarish intensity of suffering like you can't imagine. Spirits, intensity of suffering, of attachment, you know, incredible grasping and attachment. Animals, incredible predominance of unbelievable ignorance. We've all got all the delusions, but there's variations of these. There's a human one, which is the best of a bad lot, really, because at least you can practice virtue. You've got, you know, our virtue, we can access our virtue. Your little doggy can't access their virtue. Some tendencies of some doggies, due to past habit, are born like a little helping doggy or something, and there's some karma you can see, but there's not much volition there. There's not much kind of clarity. There's not much ability to put 2 and 2 together. We all know, you know, leopards can't change their spots. So much suffering as a spirit, you can't do anything. You know, so much suffering as a hell being, forget about it. These are possibilities of types of rebirth. So the first way your karma ripens, the fully ripened result is a type of rebirth. You get into that suburb. Then within that suburb, you know, you have also the tendencies, experiences similar to the cause, and environmental results. So everyone's got an environment. So let's not go to human birth. You know, I use the example of that fisherman, little boy. Due to past karma of being in the lower realms as a result of killing, he exhausted the fully ripened result karma, exhausted that result of being in the lower realms as a result of killing, finished that karma, and like a miracle this life, got a nice human mummy. So first result is from non-killing. He gets a decent human life. Because we've got billions of karmic seeds carried around in our little bank vaults, billions of karmic seeds. So he exhausted one particular track of negative karma of killing, and like a miracle of the past death, he could have been a fish or a dog, some karma ripened, it was triggered, and he got a human mummy. So then second, within this life, the other 3 kind of residual results of karma manifest. The tendency, in his case, he had very nice tendencies, he was kind and generous and loving, but because he hadn't purified all aspects of killing, he had the residual result, and this is the tragic one, of a tendency to kill. So he spent his life fishing. Third way karma ripens, or the second in this life, the residual result of past killing, which he also hadn't purified, was the experience similar to the cause of having past killed. You get killed, or you die young. Now look at the third one is the environmental result, which initially is more abstract, but it's all explained when you understand the Vajrayana model of the 4 elements and the interaction between the mind and the elements, like I explained yesterday. So the third result in this life, the residual result of killing, which also hadn't been purified, is that the physical world itself harms you. The water's polluted, the food is polluted. You kiss your grandmother, you get COVID and die. You're sick all the time, your body's weak. These are the 3 karmic results. The 3 karmic results in this even human life, because you haven't purified all aspects of killing. Whereas if you, like this other little boy I always quote, his mummy was taking the lice out of his head, and he was crying with compassion for the lice. Mummy, don't hurt them, it's their home. So we introduced with him, and he's like 40 something now, he's never killed. He not only had that lot of a human life, but we introduced he must have lived in vows of non-killing, and he must have purified killing, because in this life he had a tendency not to kill. No one had to teach him not to kill, it just was there because he programmed his mind with it. He didn't get killed, at least not so far, and he doesn't get sick. So that's the the results. So the 4 results of non-killing: human body, don't kill, don't get killed, and you're fat and healthy. All the virtuous actions are like that. The non-virtuous actions are like the opposite. So if you look at us, we've got a human body, but look at the majority of humans, they kill. Most Christians, most Muslims, even most other religions say it's okay to kill at least something. So the tendency to kill is very strong. From the Buddhist perspective, is because we haven't purified the tendency to kill, and that's why you live in vows. That's why you purify every day. That's the tragedy of the human birth. Look at it. So 99% of the people on the planet right now as humans will go to the lower realms. It's not being horrible. No one's doing it to them. Karma's a natural law. Karma's a natural law. Karma's a natural law. So what's a natural law mean? It's the opposite to God's law. We're so used to God's law. There's no such equivalent. Well, there are some Buddha's laws, but we're talking about natural negativities. That's why I always quote that Jesuit priest when I asked him what is a sin by definition. By definition, it is doing what God said not to do. And that's the view we have instinctively about morality. If somehow someone said you shouldn't do it, we walk around checking to see who saw us do it. And if no one saw us, we think, oh, I got away with it. That's schizophrenic. Because it's instinctive, it's a view of ego. We've made that up. There's no such thing as punishment and reward in Buddhism. There's no punisher. There's no rewarder. We've got to think about this because it's instinctively how we feel. It's nonsense. It's made up by our own rubbish minds. Karma's a natural law. Your doctor doesn't say don't smoke. Why not? Because I say so. I'm going to give you cancer. No, well, you'd laugh at that. But that's how we think about reality. It's not what Buddha's saying at all. So what's a negative action for the Buddha? Well, honey child, guess what? It's an action that harms another. The heavy ones, like killing. This priest said there is some aspect of natural law in its being wrong, but the main reason it's wrong is because God's wrong. That's massive, and I'm not complaining, but that is not the Buddha's view, you know. There's no such thing. He's not a boss. He's not a boss. He's not a punisher. There's no concept of punishment and reward, but that's how we hear it. That's our mistake, not Buddha saying it. So we've got to analyze it like this and take it on board if you choose. No one's forcing you. So then when you really start to take it on board, you become accountable. You grow up, you become an adult. You stop feeling like a victim. It's all done to you. Stop trying to hide your badness because no one's going to see what you'll get away with it. I mean, it's demented. You become accountable. You become grown up when we take the view of karma because we are the one who creates ourselves. Just like with health, we get it when it comes to the body. We know we produce a healthy body. We don't blame, you can sue the cigarette company. People try, like as if you played no role, that you are dying of cancer, suing Marlboro. I mean, you can do it. I hope you get your money before you die. It doesn't help. You smoke. Due to your tendencies, you smoke. So take responsibility, So good and bad actions. The natural law of karma runs all the minds of the universe, just naturally. Just naturally. They say the bodhisattvas have such compassion for us sentient beings. Forget about for the fact that we don't have bodhicitta or realize emptiness, but that we don't realize cause and effect. We are so schizophrenic. We're looking out there all the time for what are the cause of my happiness, what's the cause of my suffering, and we blame. You blame your boyfriend for being mean to you, and you blame your boyfriend for being kind to you. It's his fault I'm happy, not mine. You blame the cake, It's the cake's fault, not mine. I mean, we're demented. This is samsara. The karma's fundamental. It's got implicit in everything in Buddhism. And it implies emptiness too. Dependent arising.
Venerable?
Yeah.
So if I'm a soldier and I've killed people.
Yeah, come to your answer, yeah.
And now I realize that was wrong or that.
Of course, then you stop and you purify. Nothing you can't purify. Perfect. So to answer your question.
So that's what I can do is.
That's the point we're going to get to now in a minute. So get to her question finally. So thank you for the question. Now we get to the answer. Whatever we do, we come into this life. You see, we become into the materialist views as we come into this life of a blank slate or program with mummies and daddies' tendencies, aren't we? That's why we look back into the past and try and find, you know, we check people's brains to try and find, especially when it's naughty things. I always remember those Columbine kids, remember? 25 years ago. I remember reading in the 20th anniversary that the mother of one of them wrote a memoir, and you can see the intensity of her suffering, taking the Christian view or the materialist view that somehow she was the blame, you know? And it broke up their marriage, that the suffering was incredible. They got blamed by everybody. It was like torture. Because there's no factoring in that her kid came into that life, to her womb, programmed with his own damn tendencies. It's such a simple idea. So we can't blame God. You don't want to do that. If you're Italian, you do. I was trying to get upset, but I mean, Lama Yeshe, back in the 80s, when he went to the hospital in Italy to visit his friend Geshe Jabakyatso, who was teaching at the centre there, Institute Lama Tsongkhapa, and Lama went in and he was shocked by all the men in the ward, the rude things they say about God. God is a pig. It's all God's fault. I mean, I was a Catholic and you'd never dare say a word about God. I mean, my father, who wasn't a Catholic, when he got really angry, he'd say, we'd wait for God to touch the ceiling. But we can blame our mother. Nobody blames their father. It's the mother. Isn't it? You've got to blame somebody, you know. You've got to blame somebody because you came from them. So the first thing they do. So that's the thing about with those Columbine kids, everybody pointed to the family. And all they could discover was two nice white Christian parents. They couldn't find any mistake, but no one believed it. There must be hidden something there because we have nowhere else to go to find the source of these boys' demented minds, you know. So they even dug up his brain to try and find the reason, and they can't. So the karmic view, I mean, it's a nice hypothesis. I find it the best, most reasonable, if I take of viewpoints in the world, it's the best reasonable view as far as I'm concerned. So first you have to use it intellectually and try to at least prove it intellectually, logically as a hypothesis. That's perfectly reasonable. But we come into this life fully programmed with our own tendencies. So that boy who is now fighting in the war, due to their karma from past having been killed and of having killed, so they have two of the responses. One is the tendency to keep killing, and two is from having killed so both having the tendency to kill, but also from having been killed, they kill others. And so the people they kill is only because they've been killed by them in the past. So they've got the two, you know, or then they die from it. That's from having been killed as well. So there's no karma that can't be purified. It's logical, it's impermanence and emptiness. It's logical, there's nothing that can't change. So, you know, many of us who become Buddhists, we might have killed people in a war before, but we might have killed the rats and the roaches or whatever. I had an abortion, like in my case, I had an abortion when I was 23. The tendency was there, only occurred once. I always like to use this as an example, it's very helpful, of how karma ripens, the dynamics between people, you know. So then I was 23 and I was a hippie in London, and I was a good hippie, so I had this boy, and I remember that second, I often mention, that second in that bed with that boy, that second I said to myself, oh no, I'm pregnant. The next second I said, I'm going to have an abortion. Right there, came out of my mind. Not from the blue, but from my tendency. And the karma with that person, I think of it as a girl, don't know why, I didn't know, because they cut her out when she was 12 weeks old. They didn't tell me what gender she was. There's a karma between me and her. So there she was, having been in another realm in the past, and then at the time of her death, one of her virtuous karmic seeds of non-killing was triggered, and that trigger programmed right then, a few weeks before, programmed her to come to my fallopian tube. It wasn't random. We have the karma together. Strong karma. She had the karma to come to my body. She came, and then next one, she had the karma, first of all, from non-killing to get born as a human, my body. And then second, she had the karma from having past killed me to get killed by me. That's why the second thought was, I'll have an abortion. And then I felt fortunate. It was 1968 in London. It had just been accepted as part of the national health, free, you know. So I thought, oh, I'm lucky. I went to the Charing Cross Hospital, saw a doctor, he booked me in, and they, you know, the nurses and doctors organised it and cut out this little person. And they didn't do it properly, so the poor little person got mangled, and I had to have another DNC. You know, I remember that. It was karma, the strong karma between us, meaning a history between us, you know. And then the tendency in my mind, because if I hadn't killed in the past, there's no thought, the thought wouldn't have arisen. And if I hadn't killed her in the past, that thought wouldn't have arisen in relation to her. I decided one time to kill fish to impress a boyfriend. No fish came. They were pulling the fish out. No fish came to my hook because I didn't have the karma to kill anybody. There's no fish there that had the karma to be killed by me. But this person in the fetus, there was a connection between us, strong connection between us. So whenever I do my purification, we'll discuss the 4 steps, the 4 opponent powers. You first regret, reliance, the remedy and resolve. There are 4 steps in the purification practice. Psychologically, very brilliant. Regret is the first one, which is not guilt. We think of it as guilt. Oh, I did this, I did that, I'm a bad person. No. I did this and I did that. What can I do to fix it? So I did this and I did that. Then you conclude, I don't want the future results. I ate the sugar. I don't want diabetes. What can I do to fix it? I did the action. I killed. I don't want the result, me being born in lower realms, me tending to kill, me getting killed or me getting sick. I don't want that. Thank you very much. I don't want that. Thank you. What do I do to fix it? That's regret. First step. So you regret. Now, regretting means acknowledging that it is a negative action that will bring you suffering. It's a negative action because it harms another, but the reason at the beginning you regret is because you don't want the suffering. That's the piece we miss in the West. We just think it's about compassion, then we get guilty. Or it's wrong, I shouldn't have done it. No. You don't want the future suffering, like that sugar and the diabetes, like the smoking and the cancer. You've got to know that your actions bring results. This is the fundamental principle about karma, to have this theory that your thoughts, feelings and emotions and actions bring results to you. We create ourselves. His Holiness says karma is like self-creation. First one is, and that's what renunciation means. I don't want future suffering. You've got to be revolted by the thought of future suffering. And that's what energizes our wish for health, isn't it? We're so vividly aware now of all the nutritional values of all foods and all the problem ones. We won't go anywhere near a certain food if we know it's going to cause a bellyache or future suffering. We're really rigorous. That's exactly the view with karma, to know you don't want future suffering. Lower realm rebirth, tendency to keep killing, being killed or getting sick. That's just from killing. Every negative action has its own results. Every positive action has its own results. So this first one, this purification practice. And then before that, you live in vows. Like I mentioned, the power of vows.
Venerable Robina.
Fisherman and the little boy who's crying for compassion for the lice, is that the little boy with compassion for the lice had purified, not only he had purified killing, all aspects of it. So got his human body, no tendency to kill, didn't get killed, and didn't have environmental result of killing. Was healthy and fat. You can see with some of that, I mean, for me, I must have lived in vows in the past. I've never had a thought to kill, really. Occasionally, I might have. Fat and healthy, you know. I'm fat and healthy. I'm 80 this year. I'm fat and healthy. So far. Don't get sick. Never got COVID. You know, I'm not trying to be clever. I must have some virtuous karma from the past of not killing. I'm not trying to be showing off. And I don't kill. And no one's killed me yet. They better try. So they're the results of not killing. Human body, no tendency to kill, don't get killed, still fat and healthy. So far, so good. Well, you know what? Forget emptiness, forget bodhicitta, forget Buddhahood. I want that again at least. So how to get it? Live in vows, not rocket science. And purify. Live in vows and purify. This is your basic practice. It is all to do with karma. The first scope is all to do with karma. If we miss that and float off into the second scope of the Lamb Room and want to do mindfulness and watch our mind, you don't have any basis. You can't skip
Venerable Robina.
in the West because we think it's boring. Oh, vows, behaviour, how boring, you know. It's the fundamental basis of all practice. It's all about karma. It's the fundamental teachings of Lord Buddha. Then you can start to work on your mind. Then you can get bodhicitta. Then you can realise emptiness. It's one step at a time, you know. So anyway, that's a long answer to your question. Did it answer it? Did it answer it?
Yes.
Thank you, sweetheart. Yes, yes, yes. Where? Yes, yes.
So, do you believe that karma, in a way, could
Start the question again.
Oh,
Say it again. Choose your words carefully. I heard you say the word belief. I don't believe anything. We're talking, you don't believe in E equals MC squared. You don't believe that 1 + 1 is 2. You hypothesize it. So ask your question here.
so then would you hypothesize
Yeah, go on, say it.
that karma could result in a sort of collective
A
punishment?
little bit louder, darling.
Karma could result in a collective punishment, because if we
A
look
collective.
because if we look at all these attachments that have formed in the last 200 years with deindustrialization and the
Yes.
climate, all this greed that's causing our planet to be
Yes, exactly,
destroyed.
yes.
So
Collective,
It is-
absolutely, collective karma, yes, but collective, that means, so the way to describe collective karma is very simple. No, you're absolutely right, it is that. It's simply a bunch, we're social beings, aren't we? Would you agree we're social beings?
yes.
Even as a group of people called boys, or a group of people called 18-year-olds, or a group of people called fish, or a group of people called Italians, we're all groups and we do things in groups. So we're going to experience the results in groups and we're going to all do the same actions in groups. So that's what collective karma is. There's no doubt about that. That attachment is hugely strong now. Attachment, which is actually the catalyst for the incredible suffering of the planet right now. Totally agree. So the karmic view of why the environment's no good now is because of past killing, past lying, past stealing. And you weren't here the other teachings, were you? Yesterday, day before.
No, I was.
No, okay, that's fine. But there's very extensive and kind of quite granular teachings about how karma works. So the long-term results. The long-term cause of everything is first in the mind and the past actions of the individual who experiences it. So from the point of view of, say, the mess of the environment now, if we take it even just from the point of view of pollution, that's the karmic result of past killing, collective past killing. But the condition now, the catalyst in this life now, is the actions we do, that catalyzes that karma. Do you understand?
Yes.
That's how they talk. Yeah, collective karma for sure, definitely. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the way that we can kind of adopt the laws of karma in thinking about others. You talk about karmic connections,
That's right.
and I want to. Can you talk a little bit about like the practices of like exchanging yourself for others, and also how we're all kind of interconnected by.
Okay, that's the compassion wing. So, there's this lovely analogy I always repeat, and I probably haven't said it this weekend. The bird needs 2 wings. Wisdom and compassion. So if you're a bit familiar with it, as you seem to be, with this presentation of all the path, the Tibetan packaging, this Lam Rim, and I keep saying junior school and high school, the one of karma and abiding by the laws of karma, controlling your behaviour, living in vows, purifying, which is all the path of renunciation, which is all the path of understanding yourself, putting yourself together first. It's like we call in the West self-compassion. They put yourself together first. And when you know this for yourself, then you can apply, you go to the next level, which is a compassion wing, and now you can go, oh my God, we're all in the same boat. So you've got to have this as a basis first. So in other words, if you're trying to help people who are sick, you can't just rush out. You've got to first study health, and then you've got to know your own health, and you've got to know the laws of health, and you've got to realize, oh my God, I'm living in this law. So you put yourself together first. Now that's the basis of your own happiness. Now you can help others. You're qualified. That's the compassion wing. So then what do you mean? So then you mean the role of all those practices. Okay, I'll put it this way. You can't have that level of practice, compassion, exchanging self for others. That's an impossibility without doing the first work.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can't go to high school if you haven't done junior school. You certainly can't go to university if you haven't done high school, and you can't go to Tantra, which is postgraduate, until you've done the compassion wing. So it's very organically organized, step by step, psychologically. So when you did, this is all the wisdom we're talking about here. When you put this together for yourself, you're totally in charge of your own life, your own mind. You've got renunciation. You don't want further suffering. You know the causes of it, and that's what we would call self-compassion in the West. I'd say it's not just having a massage and a little weep, or a lie down, or a hot bath. That's nice too, but self-compassion means stop creating future suffering, which is hard work. You understand? So anyway, then of course you are qualified And you look out and you go, oh my God, we are all in the same boat. So then you really now are able to want to be of benefit to others. But this is the point now, let's look into this. The level of compassion that they talk about on the Bodhisattva path is absolutely fundamentally rooted in the understanding of karma. So let's look at that. So, okay, compassion is the definition, is a thought, starts with a thought, may you not suffer. So that means you see someone suffering and your heart goes out. Well, that's compassion. Now let's analyze what's suffering. But to know what suffering is, you've got to go right back to junior school, or actually high school as well, the renunciation path, and you've got to look at Lord Buddha's Four Noble Truths. There is suffering, there are 3 levels. First kind is the suffering of suffering, which is when the bad things happen. And now, if we think of compassion, that's the only suffering we identify. We see the suffering of the planet, we see the sickness, we see the poverty, we see the wars. That's the first level of suffering. And they're the only ones we have compassion for right now. That's just the tip of the iceberg of suffering. So if you haven't done the Four Noble Truths for yourself and identify the levels of suffering and want to get rid of them, you can't possibly have that level of compassion for everybody. So the compassion we have now is only for those who are experiencing the suffering of suffering. Poverty, wars, pollution. You get my point? Which is big enough.
Yeah.
But there's
Yeah.
2 other levels of suffering. So let's
Yeah.
look at those. We've discussed them, we've implied them. The second one's called the suffering of change, which is really related to the suffering of the delusions, attachment, the lies that mind tells that cause us to be trapped in our attachment and aversion and anger and pride and jealousy and neuroses. That level of suffering. So, so if you've got a person, so when we know that level of suffering, then you look at the world and you're going to see one person on the street, looking poor, and you have compassion for them. But then you see another person who's rich, living in a house with no poverty, but we think they're not suffering, but they could be more jealous, more neurotic, more evil than the person who's, maybe the homeless person's got a lovely mind. So they don't have the first kind of suffering, the homeless one, but the lovely, the rich, beautiful people have the second kind of suffering, far worse because it's more nuanced and more subtle and more long-term, and it's more hidden. Do you understand my point? And if you don't, so then suddenly you understand the second kind of suffering, that increases your compassion for millions and more people, the rich ones, or maybe it's not, it's only what, 1%, isn't it? The majority of people are poor, have got the main suffering, but all the ones who are happy and rich, and you never think they're suffering. Then you have compassion for them. The subtlest suffering, the one that's most nuanced, and it's hard for us to get our head around this if we have a materialist view, certainly even if we have a Christian view, is called all-pervasive suffering, which is everybody, which means you're born with attachment. So, okay, if you think of attachment as like being a junkie, which is really it is. It's a junkie mind, craving, never satisfied, always wanting something more. So we're all got that. So the first kind of suffering is when you can't get the junk, so you're like in a nightmare. The second kind of suffering is having attachment and getting the junk. The third kind of suffering is being born with a junkie's body in a world made of junk. And to survive, you have to ingest junk. Are we communicating? That's all pervasive suffering. So then you have compassion for everybody. So the solution to the first kind of suffering is stop harming others. The solution to the second kind of suffering, give up attachment. The solution to the third kind of suffering, realize emptiness. So then you're really equipped with real compassion for every damn being in the universe. Are we communicating?
Yeah.
So now what's your question based
Yeah,
on
I wanted to understand that because we talk about a lot of it at the primary level, like how
which we
people-
have to for ourselves
Yeah,
first, to get it
for
clear
our-
first.
Yeah, for like the people that appear in our lives, for example, right? And
So
I want
start that sentence again. What?
that we talk about it kind of like the people that appear in our lives.
What do you mean we talk about it? Sorry, say what
Like
you mean by that.
we practice
That
these-
level of compassion
that level of compassion with
for
the
our
people-
loved ones.
for our loved
So,
ones.
but
Mhm.
go on then.
But what I'm trying to say is that to kind of put the karmic understanding that they're in our lives because of our karmic connection.
That's right. That's right.
And
Then
then to be able to see that their karma that is karma that bring us together.
Yes,
and
that's right.
And to be able to extend that, to connect that with all the beings in the world. Is that the correct way to think about it?
okay, right now, okay, that's a good point. So right now, if we look into the compassion wing, What we're aiming to do with bodhicitta, the culmination of the compassion wing, the first stage is to accomplish this bodhicitta with this paradigm shift in your mind where finally only others arises in you. You only have infinite compassion for others because you've finished with I. But the very first step in that process is this cultivation of equanimity. So to answer your question, we have to understand this equanimity. This is the very first step in the culmination of bodhicitta. Okay, equanimity is crucial as a foundation upon which you build love, compassion, great compassion, bodhicitta. So without it, you can't. So equanimity is that you look at the world and you see that the entire universe, from our perspective, being a samsaric person, having ignorance, attachment, and aversion, the three poisons, that the world of beings is divided into three categories. There's no fourth category. The objects of our attachment, our beloveds. That's it, few people, and they change. The objects of our aversion, few people, maybe a bit more, ones who don't do what we, the attachment, the beloveds are those who do what my attachment wants. The second lot are those who by definition do what my attachment doesn't want. They're called enemies. First they're called friends. The third, which is 99.999% of the universe, are called strangers. Why? Because they neither do what my attachment wants, nor don't do what my attachment doesn't want. So we can see that's implicit for us. So we've got to cut that and see the illogic of that division. So there's much analysis and meditation we have to do to realize it's a completely phony categorization. It's a totally subjective, self-centered categorization. And there's many logical arguments you have to use to prove the truth of that. And on the basis of this, you then build the wish to have love, compassion for all beings. But that means you've got to see that they're all equal. The starting point is, so equanimity is very clear. The definition is very clear. In my words, it is this heart, when you've got it, a heartfelt recognition that friend, your beloved, enemy, the one you can't stand, and the one you just, and 99% of the strangers, we couldn't care less about them, they're all drop dead, we don't mind. The friend, enemy, and stranger are, the definition is the heartfelt recognition that they, from their point of view, are equal to each other from one point of view, only one. They're not equal in terms of height or beauty, they're equal from one point of view. Very simple. They all wish only to be happy and they all wish only to not suffer. That's what we have to prove to ourselves. And when we then apply that, there you are with your beloved sister, little sister, and she's playing with a smelly kid next door, and you instinctively want to protect your sister because you love her because she's close. But then when you apply equanimity, you go, be careful, honey. That little other kid, the smelly kid who picks her nose and is mean, she in her own heart feels exactly like my beloved sister. She might be mean, but she only wants to be happy and she only doesn't want to suffer. And this is really quite hard because we don't accept that. We have to even analyze what that means. It's very hard for us to hear that. That's equanimity. And then it becomes what you then remember 1,000 times a day when you're in the car, in the road, you see people, strangers and enemies, and you catch yourself. It still doesn't mean, equanimity sometimes doesn't mean, well, you've got to go and start living with her. You've got to bring the little ugly smelly girl next door into your house and give them the sister. No, you've got to calm her with your sister. But realize this little smelly kid, she only wants to be happy. And then you have compassion because due to her negative karma, she's being smelly and mean. So equanimity is the starting point. You've got to apply it 1,000 times a day because the karmic appearances of beloved and ugly and boring are very deep.
That makes a lot
You with me?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the starting point. Then you can grow from, that's the foundation, and you grow it from there. Anybody else have questions?
There's a couple of questions.
A question?
The first someone put in the chat, it's from Katura. She said, could you give an example of purification practices for lying and slander?
Okay, for all of the practices the same. Okay, let's go through the purification practice. If we're Tibetan Buddhists, well, now that we've done some Vajrayana, we'll know there's a practice, we call it, I've done my Vajrasattva, we'll say. So Vajrasattva is simply the name of Buddha, really, in Tantra, the equivalent of he's a tantric aspect of Shakyamuni Buddha. It's a different aspect of the Buddha, that's all. And it's a particular practice that all Tibetans really like. It's a particular mantra. Mantras are all Sanskrit. Tibetans never translate the mantras, they keep them in Sanskrit. They teach, and that's one of the meditation I wanted to do before we went home today. I wanted to do blessing the speech, which is really reciting Sanskrit syllables, which are the basis of all the mantras. It's said to be very pure, very blessed. So then we do that practice, but basically it's 4 steps. You've got the practice consists of 4 steps. And this is a psychological process. So we all know if you've taken the empowerment, you have a little sadhana, you can even say your Sanskrit and ring your bells and blah, blah, blah. But I think it's really important to do it very simply, very directly, to make it experiential, because it's you going through the process of these 4 steps. We're so used to it because we visualize the Buddha, and just like with the Christian teachings, we assume it's Buddha who purifies us. It is not the Buddha who purifies us. It is our own mind that purifies us. So as Lama Yeti says, the power of purification is the power of your regret, your reliance, your remedy, and your resolve. So we've really got to really think of it, that's our mind that is what is purifying. As Lama Yeti says, we create negativity with our mind, and we purify it by creating positivity with our mind. So the word purification, that's the way they use the term, but it's just this changing of your mind, So the 4 steps, the first is called regret. Like I said, it's not guilt. Guilt is our default, and guilt is just anger, and you're the object. So if I'm angry with Bob, you did this and you did that and you're a bad person. Well, guilt is I did this and I did that and I'm a bad person. So it's completely irrational and it's very ego-based, and we have to consciously change it. So the first step, like I said, I use the example of my abortion. When I was 23. That's, many years ago. So I remember it, I recall it. And of course, it's just an example of, because if I take my mind as being beginners, I've done countless killing in the past. I always think of a whale, It opens its mouth in its 40-year life for one mouthful of one breakfast on one day, and 40 million little beings go in. That's a lot of killing. You might have one abortion. Don't get too dramatic, please. I'm not saying it therefore doesn't matter. It's a perspective. So I use it as an example, and then, so I regret, and how regret is sounding is like this. I recall I had the abortion. I recall the situation, and I recall that at that time, I wasn't equipped to do anything else. We tend to think, well, if I regret it, but I can't regret it because that's all I could do at the time. That's not the point. That's all we were capable of at the time. But we're looking back on it now. So then when I was smoking my cigarettes, I wasn't capable of giving up cigarettes at that point. It was not possible. So I don't say, when the doctor tells me I've got cancer, or getting cancer, I don't say, well, I can't regret smoking for the last 20 years because I wasn't capable of anything else. You've got to regret it, because then you say, I'm going to change. Regret's the first step in changing. That's all. You acknowledge you did it. And then you say, I don't want the future suffering. So regret is not, I shouldn't have done it. It is not, I'm a bad person. That's how we think about it. It's, oh my gosh, I did do it. Guess what? You acknowledge it, you own it. And then, you know what, Robina? I say to myself, I regret having done that because I sowed a seed in my mind. I don't want it to multiply. I don't want to get the result. I don't want to die young. I don't want to get killed. And I don't want to be born in the lower realms. So I regret it because I don't want the future suffering. Then I think, whom can I turn to? How can I fix it? So the second one is, where's my doctor who's got the medicine that I apply, that I take, that heals me? So we talk about reliance. We rely upon the doctor. The Christian one is very, 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 very different, and we just think it's the same. The Christian one is that God forgives you, because it's God's forgiveness that is what purifies you. It's a really important point. Buddha does not have that. Buddha is a nice person. He would forgive you. That's not the point. Are we communicating? And that's how we misuse forgiveness in our life. Like if I'm Bob's girlfriend and I keep cheating on him, or even I just keep being mean to him, bad-mouthing him, and I think that I'm in the car, I'm all guilty on the way to work, and I ring him, oh, Bob, I'm so sorry. And all I'm waiting for, because I'm feeling all neurotic, because I'm terrified he'll give me up, all I'm waiting for is Bob to say, it's all right, Robina, I still love you. I go, oh, phew, I got away with it again. Well, nothing will ever change. So I'm misusing him to say I forgive you to make me feel better. Very wicked. It's nice to be forgiven, but that's not what purifies you. You changing is your regret. Then you think, well, who can I rely upon to give me the medicine? So that's Vajrasattva in this context. He's our Buddha. So we delight that we found a doctor, that's refuge. The second part, they call it reliance, but this is now where you have compassion for those you've harmed. So in my case, it will be compassion for Bob. First, I have compassion for myself. I don't want the future suffering and continue to be bad-mouthing, and I don't want the suffering of being bad-mouthed. So I've got to have regret first for my own sake. Then I've got to have compassion for Bob, because I harm him.
Panel Robina?
Third step, you take the medicine. So here, we know there are many, often they refer to this as the antidote. So the antidote to anything is the opposite, isn't it? So in your daily life, if you've regretted killing, the antidote will be to help people, will be to save lives. The antidote to lying, someone asked me that question, would be to stop lying, to tell the truth. But here, the particular practice in the meditation, where you visualize the Buddha, you use your creative imagination in these practices. You visualize, you're imagining the Buddha above your crown, and then you visualize Buddha sending nectar, and you visualize filling with nectar and driving out all the imprints of all the negativity that you've done, disappearing like filthy liquid into space as you recite the Sanskrit syllables. That's the medicine. It's not Buddha who purifies you, it's the conviction of your mind imagining it that purifies you. You purify you. It's the strength of your commitment, Rinpoche says, the strength of your visualization, the strength of your wish. That's what purifies. The fourth one is resolve to stop doing it. He should say to me, yes, Robina, I'll forgive you if you promise to change. There's no point in keeping forgiving me and I keep doing it. He won't forgive me one day, you know. So it's really, we wrongly use forgiveness. It's accountability. One, I regret having bad mouth Bob. Two, I can ask him to forgive me, but then I also have to promise him I will try to change. Then something will shift. So the first one is huge. It's a starting point. I've got to acknowledge I did something. And then I don't want the future suffering. For me, then well, there's no reliance on Buddhas here or anything, just talking. The second part, I have compassion for those I've harmed. Third, I'll do the remedy. And then fourth, I'll resolve to change. That's purification. It's logical psychology, you know. There's no karma we can't change. Finally, it's the realization of emptiness that cuts the root. So maybe we should talk about emptiness before we finish today, just to... Yeah. So go on, what's the...
I think Ed has a question.
Go on, Ed. Go, sweetheart.
Good morning from New Zealand.
Yeah.
When one is
Ed,
practicing,
Ed, are you might be muted?
I'm not
No.
muted.
Ed, are you there, darling? I can see
You
your
can't hear
picture.
me?
The big wave.
You can't hear me?
slowly.
You can't hear me?
He's not coming. Okay,
No, we're not hearing you, Ed.
Okay, never mind. So go on, talk to me.
Okay,
More
never
questions?
mind, I'm sorry.
More questions? Go on to the meeting.
John, I have a question.
I don't want me, I want the pictures. There we go. Any more questions here?
I have a question.
I have a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
About
Yeah, go.
practice last night to say to myself about my dream, then I'll be awakened.
Oh, yeah, good, very good.
And
What happened?
well, I practiced this before without much seeming success.
Okay, what
But
happened
my
last night?
question is,
Hmm.
I wake up and I remember the dream. If I go
Oh, okay.
back into the dream, then
No, this practice is that at the time you're dreaming, you're conscious of that you're dreaming. That's a very good practice to really help us cut the grasping and everything is solid. That's the practice.
I understand, but
Yeah.
can I benefit
Oh, of course you
if
can.
I
There's no doubt.
remember-
Yeah, that's another discussion. Of course, because it's your subtle mind. Everything that comes in a dream is buried in your mind somewhere, and it comes up as these visions and images, isn't it? We can learn a lot from our dreams. Absolutely, of course you can. Very much, definitely can. It's your mind, definitely. Yeah.
Can I try again?
So let's look at why realizing emptiness is what cuts the root of the delusions. It's quite hard to hear that initially. It seems a bit abstract. So what purification is doing is kind of like keeping the weeds under control, basically. Because then you keep the weeds under control. With purification, you're not pulling out the weeds yet. You're not pulling out the seeds. You're keeping them under control. You're preventing them from ripening. You see what my point is? That's a big difference. And that's great, because if you prevent them from ripening, you're making space for the flowers to grow. So there's almost like one way they talk about teachings. One way is you've got to pull out the weeds, and the other one is you've got to grow the flowers. You've got to purify and create merit. That's the terms they use, and that's reasonable. You got to stop doing the negative things and try and stop to think them, then you make and then purify them and then make space to have virtuous thoughts and do virtuous actions. If your mind is, if your garden's overwhelmed by weeds, you can't start growing flowers. There's no space. So the same with our mind. So the purification is the keeping under control the weeds to quite a dramatic way, and you're putting atomic bombs under the tendencies, and that's why living in vows is so powerful. You're putting atomic bombs under the tendencies, and you need to, this is the very first level of practice. It's really powerful. But then until you've cut the root of all the delusions, which is the subtlest, the most primordial delusion, ego grasping, marimpa, ignorance, the root delusion, until you've cut that, you're not out of samsara. It can keep coming back. It can keep coming back. So the reason, you've got to look at the reason. The reason, quote unquote, realizing emptiness, which sounds so abstract to us, is why it's so necessary, is because, you see, that means we have to, okay, we've got to understand that all these delusions, this term they use, or afflictions, is the common word they use in Buddhism. And Lama Yeshe never used that word because he just somehow knew. Lama, I always joke and say that Lama was really born a hippie, he just pretended to be a Tibetan. I mean, I'm sure, because he just talked like a hippie from day one. He's incredible. And when you really do see the traditional way that Tibetans talk, like when Lama Zopa taught, when I first met him, it was like 10th century Tibetan. There was no difference. It's like, it's like hearing Chaucer talk. Do you understand? But Lama Yeshe just talked like a modern person. He was extraordinary. It always blows my mind how he was able he had craziest kind of structures and grammar, but he just chose the right words. He was incredible, I can't tell you. He blows my mind. I mean, he never said the word affliction, which is a typical word translated from Tibetan or Sanskrit. He used the word delusion, or he made up his own terms, about 20 of them, wackiest terms for the delusions, dualistic puzzle. You have so many words for his hilarious, his own language. And what is it about these? And what does realizing emptiness mean? And how does it cut these? And how does it cut the root of samsara, as they say? Well, the basic quality, the basic character of all the neurotic states of mind. Remember, if you look simply, you've got the three categories of states of mind, three classifications. The neurotic, I-based, fear-based, neurotic, delusion, distressing, distorted, nonsense, ego grasping, the root one, that assumes an inherent I, that then gives rise to this enormous emotional hunger to get what that fantasy I wants, and the incredible distress and panic attack of anger or aversion when it doesn't get what it wants. These are the three main delusions. All the others are branched out of those. They're enormously emotional. They call them the emotional afflictions, mental afflictions, but their real function, and this is hard to see, and when we can see it, we can understand how we can realize emptiness. We can realize how we can cut the root, is that they're all, those emotions, as we refer to them, are rooted in being or driven by, underpinned by, literally wrong concepts. So a wrong concept isn't a moralistic issue. 1 + 1 is 3 is a wrong concept, because we've all proven in math that it's actually the right concept is 1 + 1 is 2. It's a conventional reality, So we're talking conventional reality here. So attachment, for example, all the delusions, as I said to you, as Lama Zopa says, the way he puts it very lovely, their function, all the delusions, ego grasping, attachment, aversion, and all the others. I mean, Ling Rinpoche often mentions, the young Ling Rinpoche, they talk in Buddhism about 84,000 neurotic states of mind. And I always ask the Geshes, where will I find that text? He said, you won't find it. But Buddha always goes on about the 84,000. And Ling Rinpoche always says 21,000 of those are rooted in ignorance, the root one, 21,000 are rooted in attachment, and 21,000 are rooted in anger. And the other 21,000 rooted in all three. So it's a really coherent map of the mind. If only they could tell me the text where it is. You've got to construct your own text, But it's a very coherent view of the mind. And so these three neurotic states of mind that pervade our lives, and all the others, They have the key function. There's two main characters. One, they are deeply disturbing. In their nature, they're disturbing. Why you feel pain when you're angry is because the anger is so strong, it's habit, and it even then manifests in your body. And our traditional culture, we only notice the anger when the body's shaking. You only notice your depression when you're inert in bed. You only notice your jealousy when it's physically painful, because we don't pay attention to the mind. And that's the skill that Buddha gives us with his concentration meditation, an ability to observe the mind, the thoughts, the conceptual stories that inform these emotions. So we talk about the emotions, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just the physical experience of these thoughts, because mind and body are connected, remember? So as you dig down deep into your mind, be your own therapist, as Lama Zopa says, you can see the disturbing character, and that should put you off having them. But once you really start to practice, you start to hear more deeply, and you start to understand how they are literally misconceptions. When we get that, we can understand how we can become enlightened, not to mention realize emptiness. So let's explain. Because Rinpoche says, all these delusions, emotional afflictions, they decorate on top of what is there, layers upon layers of characteristics that aren't there. So take attachment and the boyfriend. I'm in love with Bob, let's say. So you know when you're in love with Bob, which is 99% attachment, there's some love there, but who cares about the love? It's just the attachment that takes care. Attachment gets so exciting. So this person, we all know, will look utterly divine. You can't believe how divine, we can't believe how divine a person looks when you're in love with them, isn't it? From the tip of their toe down to the tip of their head. We know that. That's the function of attachment, which is why we think it's so delicious. When you see the chocolate cake, attachment in your mind decorates on that cake, on that plate, decorates on that body. Characteristics that just aren't there. In other words, it's a liar. In other words, it's a fabrication. It embellishes, it decorates, it exaggerates, it distorts. In other words, it causes you to not see reality. Don't be thinking cosmic, just even conventional reality. I think we can hear this. When we can get that, the real function of all these neuroses is that. So we have to see what the distorted picture is. That means we have to hear the story. It's like it's good to keep a journal, write it all down. What is your anger saying? So we can feel, let's say, anger when Bob cheats on me. The body's shaking, the ache is unbelievable, you're panic stricken. That's just the physical, that's just the feeling. It's kind of getting kind of throwing us off. But when we dig down deep and put words to that, the words will be saying, how dare he do that to me? I don't deserve it. They're very clear concepts, aren't they? And that's how anger feels. How dare he do that? I don't deserve it. So let's analyze each of those words and see how they are fantasies. They have no basis in reality. Why not? Because first, forget that one. We're talking even conventionally. So how dare he do that to me? So straight away, if we want to analyze emptiness, the he and the me is a fabrication. But forget that one. Let's look at the conventional one. How dare he do it to me? So what's that? That's the shock of anger when a bad thing happens to us, isn't it? So what is it saying? That in our bones, there's a very powerful feeling that I don't deserve bad things. But where is that coming from? Who said you don't? What does it mean, deserve? We've got to analyze this. So we're taking the view of karma, which is the first step, then straight away it is a nonsense. Now let's say Bob, I'm going to go further. Let's say Bob's kind to me. We don't say, oh, wow, Amazing, I deserve that, give me more, Bob, but that's implicit. So attachment is this deep primordial assumption that I only deserve good things, and when I get the good, I assume I deserve it, so give me more, mate. When he does a bad thing, that assumption of only deserve good things is completely shocked. And now aversion says, how dare that happen? I don't deserve it. So this view alone, you argue with karma. You know, that's like saying, when you look at your garden, who put a weed in my garden? I don't deserve weeds. You would laugh at that. And you know why? Because you own the garden as yours, which is karma. You know it's your garden, and you know that whatever's in your garden, you obviously put it there. So you own it. You would never say, who put weeds in my garden? I don't deserve weeds. There's no misconception there. It's valid. It's dependent arising. It's your garden. If there's a weed there, honey, you own it. But that's not the view with me. I'm an innocent victim. We think I'm an innocent victim. I didn't ask to get more. It's not my fault. That's completely in our mind. We take it as an absolute truth. Buddha says a load of rubbish, all made up. It's complete nonsense. Layers of lies there. So with just karma, I can analyze that, and it completely changes your mind if you're practicing. Because attachment and aversion are these assumptions that are based on the fantasy of an intrinsic I that didn't ask to get born, that has no cause, that is somehow plonked here schizophrenically by somebody else to whom bad and good things happen without any logic. All that's implicit in these nonsense delusions. We haven't got to analysing the delusions yet. We're analysing the assumptions behind those delusions, which is the view of innocent victim, which is the view of no karma. If you look at your bank, you don't say, why are there no dollars in my bank? I deserve dollars. You don't say that because it's your bank account. Well, Buddha's saying that my life is my garden, and whatever arises in it, including Bob punching me in the nose or Bob giving me $1 million, I deserve it because I created it. Deserves a heavy duty word. Buddha doesn't say like that. We say it. So heavy, you know. We created it. I must have created the cause to have Bob be mean to me, and I must have created the cause to have Bob be kind to me. So you own both. You own them. Completely changes your life. And there's no suffering. Eventually. It takes time. So attachment and aversion are rooted in the root delusion, and they're layers of lies, but they're so deeply ingrained, we never unpack them. We never analyze them. They're misconceptions, which means they're not valid. There's no object, there's no validity to them. There's no conventional truth to them. They're based on misconceptions. They are in themselves misconceptions. And they're rooted in the root misconception that there's an intrinsic independent I in the first place. So when you cut the root of the believing in the intrinsic I, when you're in the depth of your single point of concentration after countless lifetimes of practice, and for the first time since the beginning of this time, you see nakedly that there never has been, isn't, and never could be that fantasy I. That's when you cut that root. That's when you can't fall back after that. And that's the real purification. They're misconceptions. And they're at the level of assumption for us. So that's just a karma. That's applying karma to the relationship. And then you look into the delusions and see how they're these powerful, packed in this emotion, but you have to unpack them to the root, you know, to their very bare bones thought, the assumption. Attachment is the assumption, I only deserve good. It's the hubris. It's outrageous. It's like an infant, greedy little infant. It can only cope with nice things. It can only cope with good things happening. And then it has a panic attack of anger when it doesn't get it. How dare that happen to me? And I'm not being rude here, but these are why we suffer. It's not criticizing us. It's not like you're naughty. These are why we suffer, but it's too hard to hear it because it sounds like it's blaming us. It's too painful for us. These assumptions, they're assumptions in our mind, and these are the source of our pain. So attachment is the assumption that I only deserve good, and anger is the assumption I don't deserve bad. So we go mad because we can run between these 1,000 times a day. No wonder we suffer. No wonder we suffer. So we have to calm them down first in the middle scope. Then when we get to the bodhisattva path and we start practicing concentration and get emptiness, now it's easy to get to the root one. Because we've already unpacked the branch lies. Now we've got to unpack the root lie. There's no independent I in the first place. And that's the tricky one to get. Because the first thing we do is we hear it as nihilistic. The first one we think is, oh, well, there's no I might as well kill myself. Reading this because there's no I in the first place, but we think like that. That's why the best way to see, as Lama Zopa says, as Lama Tsongkhapa says, as Lama Yeshe paraphrases, is to see it in terms of the two truths, dependent arising, the king of logics, Lama says, to prove emptiness. And for Tsongkhapa, it's the best way to really understand emptiness because you are realizing conventional reality at the same time. And you're ensured that you won't fall into the abyss of the great mistake, Tsongkhapa says. And the great mistake is to think there's nothing. And that's the biggest mistake on the planet. The biggest mistake in the discussions about emptiness. The biggest mistake is to think it means there's no I. There's no cup, there's no this, there's no that. But this is what Lama Zopa says. When you've understood emptiness of the I, let's say, then it's as if, now which means that from the side of the I, there's not one atom of anything that causes it to be an I, that is an I. And it's as if there's no I. But dependent arising, there is an I. But, he says, what does exist is so subtle, it's as if it doesn't exist. So these two, this is the view of the yogis, you know. And you have to have, when you have them together, you can never fall into the abyss of the great mistake. The biggest mistake, that there's no I, know this and know that. So the word emptiness, we have to understand it, how it's used. It sounds nihilistic, there's nothing. No, it's very specific. We use it in daily life, you know. Oh, my cup's empty, we'll say. Of what? Well, of tea. Expecting tea, you get nothing there. So you don't just look in the cup and go, there's nothing there. You don't look in the cup and say there's nothing there. You look into the cup and you're saying, my cup's empty, you're saying there's no tea there. So your cup is empty of tea. Not just empty, it's empty of something. So when we say the I is empty, we mean of what? Of what we think is there. And so Holiness says when you do those, you know, you do the analysis like they say in the Lam Rim, when you do the analysis of looking for the I, or looking for this intrinsic I that we believe is in there. The looking, we've got to look for. He's telling us there's no intrinsic I. He's telling us there's no independent I. He's telling us that. But he says you've got to prove it to yourself, can't just believe it. So you've got to do an analysis, very clear, you've got to search for it. Sounds hilarious. So when you do the search, it's not as if, as Holiness says, you're searching. Okay, there's different levels of dependent arising. Lord Buddha teaches 3 levels in relation to this particular analysis. There's 3 levels of dependent arising. The first is that I arises in dependence upon causes. This is karma. Why karma is so powerful as, you know, as a way to take responsibility, but also as a way to realize there's no intrinsic I there, because you're the fruit of past causes, your cause, not someone else's. So already that's a great way to get understanding emptiness. I am the product of past causes, my causes. Second one, and this is a tricky one, this is the one that we do the analysis with, is that there's no I independent of the causes. Here, the second one is there's no I independent of the bits and pieces. But Buddha says, because of this ego grasping, we believe utterly and completely and absolutely without question, one of the mistakes, or 2 main mistakes, is that there is in here, as my friend Pende says, walking hand in hand with all the other thousands of parts, nose, breast, knee, ligaments, you know, pee-pee, caca, eyelashes, anger, jealousy, the hundreds and thousands of parts, components that make up an I. The conventional term for this phenomenon is I. The conventional term for that phenomenon is mug, glasses, iPad, I, me, person, self. They're all synonymous. That's the name of this phenomenon. So it's made of components. We all know that. Everything's made of components. So we believe, because of this ego grasping, implicitly, that there is a very special piece in here, a component, as Pende says, walking hand in hand with the other components, that's called I. That's one of the mistakes we make. We believe it implicitly. Our language expresses it. We say, I own a nose. You know, and one of the big arguments, they talk about one and many. It's a big argument you have to have, one of the debates we have to use to loosen the grip of this misconception. We say, I have a nose. Even more simple, we say, my cup has a handle. So without analysis, you look at that, it's a truth, but analyze it. Analyze it. What we're saying is, one, there is a thing called a cup, and two, there's a thing called a handle, as if there's two things. No, even better, base. Sorry, even better, forget the handle, base. My cup has a base. Without analysis, that's a fact, isn't it? There's the base, it's a fact, but let's analyze. The mistake is thinking, it's implicit, the mistake is that we think there's one, a cup, and two, a thing called a base. So if that's true, you have to point out two distinct, separate, independent things. And it's obvious you can't. Take away the base, there's one, where's the base, but where's the cup now? You know why? Because cup is just a name we give to the combination of all the parts. So it's clear you can't find a cup apart from you can't find a base apart from the cup. It's very clear. You can't find a cup that owns the base. You can't find an I that owns the parts. We think there is. We think that I's got a special little, somewhere in here with a capital letter, you know, and golden halo around it. And it runs our lives. It's the central player in our head. Bob says, you've got an ugly nose, Robina. How dare you insult me, I'll say. He says, no, I didn't insult you, Robina, I insulted your nose. That's hilarious to us. So what does that mean? Because we so assume there is an I and the I is the owner, you know? Or the other mistake is the I is the whole of me. Well, look at the owner first. It's irrational, Buddha says. So so, you know, I'll say one simple example. I use this example, simple example. I'll make a statement that I have a cup and glasses. So a simple way, if you're listening to me, you listen to where the sound is coming over here, you hear the words, you speak English, you know the definition of these three phenomena, you'll point out three phenomena, won't you? Cup, eye, glasses. Easy. Cup, eye, glasses. Three things exist. I said three nouns, three things exist. That's logic. Very simple. You just proved me I spoke the truth. And in this sense, very simple, the cup, the eye, and the glasses, in this case, are both separate and independent, which means if the cup breaks, the glasses are fine. They function still to see. Robina's fine. If Robina drops dead, glasses and cup are fine. Well, unless they smash. Get my point. They're independent of each other insofar as they don't rely upon each other to function as a cup, as glasses, and as eye. That's a simple example of three independent, separate phenomena. Pretty simple. Now I'll make another statement. I have a nose and an ear. Without analysis, it's true. Look, but do the analysis. If there are, I said three nouns, eye, nose, ear. So you've got to point out three things. If that's true, well, you can't. You just can't because it's not true. You can point out an ear and a nose, that's true. They're separate and independent. An ear doesn't need a nose to be able to hear at a simple level, you know? So where's the eye that owns them? We believe there is one. Christians call it a soul. Greeks call it an essence. Hindus call it an Atman. Don't we call it in the West? Probably ego or something. Buddha says you won't find it. You won't find a piece that's separate. 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 I like to do the IKEA example. The Lord Buddha didn't have IKEA. He didn't use that example. He used the example of being established as you are, then pulling the parts out to look. This is the opposite way. You have to build the eye. You look up on the computer and there's a nice eye there. You go to buy it and they give you a damn box full of bits, don't they? But they've already constructed the eye, so they know what's needed. So as you're putting the legs on each piece, they know exactly how many, they don't send you 4 knees and 5, 7 fingers. They send you each part that's exactly right. So you put them all together and you keep anxiously waiting for the piece that's called eye, without which you're convinced there won't be one. When you ring up IKEA, panicked. No, you don't need an eye, Robina. They work well together to function as the eye. Because eye is just a name you give to the parts. So there is an eye, but it's so subtle, it's as if there's not an eye. There's not an eye, we want to point one out. Look, there it is, separate from the others. So if there were one, like I said about Bob insulting my nose, when he says, you know, you're ugly, your nose is ugly, and I'll say, how dare you insult me? That actually, if there were a separate eye in there, along with the nose, then the eye will go, oh, phew, I'm glad Bob didn't insult me. Poor nose got insulted. It would happen like that. But no, we think the eye is the owner. You feel it's like a mother possessing her child as if it were her. You won't find a piece in IKEA. You put the whole of the eye together down to the toenails, the atoms, and it'll function. And it'll function perfectly as an eye. You don't need an eye to make it function as an eye. It functions perfectly as an eye. So they say the yogis in meditation see emptiness. Then when they come out of their life, they pick up their cup. They know it has no intrinsic nature, not an atom there, but it still functions to hold their tea. So these two don't contradict, you know. This is the tricky part to put together. So when you realize that in the subtlety of your meditation, you can't realize until you've got single point of concentration, because it's too subtle for the gross conceptuality to understand. Unless you're highly realized being from past lives. Like Atisha's disciple, Drom Tompa, had such devotion in Atisha, just carrying Atisha's shit, caused him to realize emptiness. So it's possible. You've got enough faith and devotion to shake the eye, you know. So then, as you know, then there's no reason to suffer after that, and that's the part that's hilarious to us. Because all the delusions are based on the assumption of an eye. When you've cut the eye, the delusions, there's nothing to hold on to, so they're just all gone. So as Lama Zopa, that lovely story Lama Zopa tells of when he was very little, up in the mountains, when he was about 8, and he saw white people for the first time. The Sherpas called them the kind of yellow hair white people or something, you know, white eyes. So he saw them across the river. He was 8 or something in this monastery, and he wanted to meet these people. So he went with his bowl of boiled potatoes across this rickety bridge, like a tree trunk, you know. The river wasn't very deep, but it was very tumultuous. The rivers are very strong up there. So he goes across the river and he falls in halfway. So how he told the story, he's 8, right? So he was recognized as the reincarnation of a previous yogi, Kursang Yeshe, a Sherpa from the past life. Great tantric yogi, spent his years up there meditating. So the assumption is he went through the whole process, like we're discussing, of death, had control over the death process, and chose his rebirth. And since the little boy was recognized, you know, his behavior was indicated who he was, blah, blah, blah. So he's recognized him formally as the reincarnation of this Kursang Yeshe. So there he is in the water, and this is how he told the story. He said, the head went to the surface for air. He didn't say, I. Just because the way they talk, you know, they train, when you're training in meditation and emptiness, you're learning to be very precise. And it's a good way to look at your mind. Instead of, I am angry, you say, oh, there's anger, there's love, there's compassion. It's very helpful for the mind to do that. That's how they talk. It's very helpful. So he said, the head came up to the surface for air. And he saw his manager having a panic attack running along the bank, you know, losing a tulku. Not cool. Because they don't teach him swimming up there. So then he said to himself, as he's in the water, he said to himself, the person known as the Laudo Lama is about to die. He was called the Laudo Lama, the name of the previous Lama, because the cave that he moved into, I think they stored the radishes or the potatoes. I never know which, no, the radishes or the onions. I never know which one it is. That's called Laudo. The radishes, so he's known as the radish Lama, you know. He sort of pulled the radishes out and moved in, and then the Lama Zopa took over the cave, you know, this life, so it's up there now, you know. So he said, the thought occurred to me, the person known as the Laudo Lama is about to die. And then he said, I didn't know anything about emptiness. Meaning in that life, he's 80 years old, he never heard the teachings. But if he had realised emptiness in his past life, which he has to have had based on this behaviour, and you can't lose that. You can even lose bodhicitta, you know that? But you can't lose emptiness. He said, so it's implied, he said, I haven't heard about emptiness, didn't know that life, but there was no fear. And this is the point, which is so cosmic to us in modern psychology. The nature of all delusions, because they are fabrications, because they are invalid concepts, because they have no basis in conventional reality, forget about ultimate, then they're based in fear, because you're believing in something that doesn't exist. So it's fear. It's like for a million years, you know, like for a few lifetimes or even 1,000 years or 20 years, you believe that that $50 note is 500. So convinced that when you see it, it says 500. So you believe it's more than it is. So you go to spend it, you expect the 500, you believe in the 500's worth, and you can only be devastated when you only get 50's worth. That's what the delusions have been doing since the beginning of this time. So no wonder there's so much fear. They are rooted in fear. Fear is their flavour. So when you've cut the root, I mean, you can cut attachment and aversion, you lessen your fear already, you're preparing. By the time you cut the root, you're in bliss, baby. Which doesn't mean you're stupid, kind of drown and look happy. He still tried to get out of the water, but we think like Mr. Darwin came up with, I think, wasn't it? Instinct for survival or something? We assume, because everybody acts like this, the monkeys and the rats and the humans all act with incredible fear when we're attacked. So we deduce it's natural, which means we think you'd be weird if you didn't have it. And we assume that if you didn't have it, you know, you wouldn't know how to function. So we give it this status. What Buddha says is stupid. Fear just causes you to have more drama and gets you confused. You need intelligence, not fear, to know you're in danger. So because he had no fear, because there's no eye to grasp at, he wasn't stupid. You don't become nihilistic and go, oh, well, there's no eye, I might as well sink to the bottom of the river and die. No, he still tried to get out of the water, but his mind, this is the point, his mind wouldn't have been disturbed. This is impossible for us. But he still got out of the water, crystal clear. Why not? Reasonable. No doubt driven by bodhicitta because he was a little bodhisattva, you know. His mind wasn't disturbed because he no longer believes in a fantasy. Well, who doesn't want that? I can't wait. Anyway, I'm raving on here. Sorry, what time is it? Time to go home already. 11:40. What's the time today? What's the schedule, Bob?
Till 12 is the schedule.
I never gave you a break, isn't it? I'm sorry.
I
So
have
maybe-
Ed's question,
What question? Yeah, where is it?
actually.
Hello,
I
Ed,
could
yes.
read it for him.
Go ahead.
It said, when generating regret, how much specificity is required?
Okay, I
The text
understand.
in general,
Yeah,
he's also
I
talking
understand.
about,
I think it's a different days. You know, if you've been having a really hard day, you know, and you shouted and yelled at your girlfriend or your wife or your dog or something, you can be specific, certain things that are causing us a lot of pain. Or especially, let's say Bob's been rude to me, mean to me, and I'm panicked, or he's left me. Then I really should, especially this one, instead of the pain and the anger, I'd really think about the causes I must have created to cause that suffering and regret it from the depths of my heart because I don't want that suffering. It's a very good example when bad things happen. It's a really good opportunity to regret whatever I did 47 lives ago to cause it. Then you can own it more powerfully. Or then if there's nothing particular today, you regret, you know, in general, things you've done today, you know, whatever, and then think in this life, or things you can't remember. And then, of course, it's beginning of this time because we've done everything. So you can be specific sometimes depending on the experience or general, but sincerely, because you know there must be countless negative seeds in your mind from countless past lives. You understand, Ed? Makes sense? Ed, just
Thank
nod
you.
if it makes sense. Yeah?
Thank you.
Ed? Yeah,
oh,
okay, good.
yeah, I think I
Yeah,
got it. I
yeah.
got a speaker.
But that's a
for it.
very important one. When bad things happen, the first instinct, like the person at work accuses you of something, you're devastated, you're freaking out. You're obsessed with trying to tell them it's wrong. Instead, why not regret the action you must have done in the past to cause it? That helps you own it. And then don't be surprised that it now shifts.
Thank you.
Because the four opponent powers, each of them purifies each of the four ways that karma ripens. So regret purifies experiences similar to the cause. Like when Bob cheats on me, this life, that's the fruit of my having cheated on him. So I own it and take responsibility. Or let's say he doesn't believe my words. I'm freaking out. That's because of a past lying. But if I regret the lying I must have done, Don't be surprised if you'll start to believe me again. Things can shift, you know. The second one purifies environmental karma, regret and compassion and refuge. Third purifies the lower realms, and the fourth purifies the tendency. So it's the four. It's a very brilliant practice, very integrated. And Lama Zopa says we're insane not to do it every day. Okay, any other questions about anything? Emptiness, for example? No. See, there's a multitude of ways of talking about emptiness. This is a good kind of granular analysis to do. But in day-to-day life, you know, the one approach to all this is one about merely label, which is actually the most advanced, but in a sense is a very practical application in daily life. So Rinpoche, Thomas one time was asked, how do you apply emptiness in daily life? He says, very simple. Just see something from another point of view. This is dependent on arising. So in other words, you know yourself, if you see things from this point of view, and you didn't see the thing in a second, let's say you see me punch Bob in the nose. You only saw that. But you didn't see the second before when he punched me. Let's say you haven't got the whole picture. Then you see it completely differently, straight away. Or if you know, like with my ears. I mean, I'm not trying to say I'm a saint, but it really does work. I was so encouraged. The ringing in my ears is awful. But I've decided to call it differently. I've decided to see it from another point of view. It's like simple, but that's applying the meaning of emptiness, because the ringing in the ears doesn't intrinsically exist as bad. The stub in the toe, just the stubbing of the toe. How that happened to me, how dare it happen to me, look at the pain, it's awful. No, just I was past karma right and be happy, Robina. Straight away, it's changed. Right there. That's seeing it from another point of view. It's powerful if we can do it, especially seeing other people through the lenses of our own dramas, you know. Because things don't have an intrinsic nature. Things are how we call them. Things are how we label them. It's very powerful. What else, people? Time to go, maybe. 22. Was there any more we had to do about death? I can't remember. Yeah, I think the main things about death, after the death and everything, all that, this is the funeral and all the 49 days and all the practices, giving people more things away, doing all the purification. You know, things like making sure you use their funds, money for doing Dharma activities or doing good things with their money or with their possessions. That's really good for the person who died. But also to bless their ashes. This is one that's very big. It's called Jangwa. You can do it yourself. It's quite long, but it's really good to get experts to it. You give some ashes or some nails or some part of the body hair, and they will bless. And then Rinpoche says it's really beneficial. It makes their body like relics, you know. And then it can be very helpful because people like to keep the ashes of their loved one. But it's always a bit sinister, isn't it, seeing this kind of canister of your dead wife's ashes on your mantelpiece. But why not bless her stuff and then have it mixed with plaster and make a beautiful Buddha image? It's very sweet. It's beneficial for your loved one and for you. That's a really good practice. That's the main one, you know, apart from all the other practices. So that's what I did for death. I think we did everything. Yeah.
You mentioned that at the teaching that there are practices that you would like us to do. Is there one that comes to mind that, like,
for what?
For either meditation or of the teachings that you gave? Do you
I did say I would lead the blessing the speech meditation.
Right. That one.
We could do that. Okay. Yeah.
I had a quick question about
What's sweetheart?
I had a quick question about
Good.
how how best to handle somebody, a relative who doesn't have a will and has possessions and all that, like how without helping them not have attachment, you know, as they die to the stuff.
So you mean the reason is it a particular example of yours, is it?
Yes.
So there's some person who hasn't got a will. Why? Because they're very attached to their things or something.
Or they don't think that it's like
important.
Yes.
Are they attached to their things and their possessions? This person?
I mean, it's hard to say. I think so.
I know. Well, then the point is, I think then the best thing you can do is give them away after they die. Make sure they're all given away.
Should I say any kind of mantras over the items?
No need for that. Just make sure they give them away because they get the benefit of that. But it's helpful for their minds not to be attached, of course.
Maybe say something like.
I mean, you can always talk about it. Often you can bring up these topics by thinking about it, talking about it from your own point of view. my experience is I've been thinking about this, and ask them what they think. It's just helping them hear it. Don't say you this and you that. Say, I've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about if I die with attachment to all my possessions, I don't want it. That'd be very distressing. So if I think if I do a will, I'll give them all away first, I can be relaxed. Talk about it from your own point of view, but let them hear it. Do you understand? It's an easy way to bring up a topic with somebody.
I think they think they
Pardon?
don't have anything worth giving away, but that's not really true, so. But then at the time of death, that might change.
That's right. If there is attachment there, that's right. Sure. Yeah, I understand.
Thing.
So this blessing the speech, you all have it in your book. If you don't know the Sanskrit mantras, you just need. I'll lead the visualization, and then you can just you need to read the words. I mean, can we have a book or something somewhere, Deborah?
Well, it's on the calendar.
On the who?
Should be on the calendar, or is it?
On the calendar?
You
access-
that you sent, also the online.
You access it online. Like if-
I know, but you're not online. You're sitting in your cushions.
Well, people may have phones.
Unless you've got your phones with you.
Is it in the first version?
No, it's not in that.
No, it should be on
If
the
you could just, I mean, is the computer screen big enough? We can put it on here, but is your computer screen big enough to, although they're both the same image, aren't they?
Yeah.
No, okay, there's no point in doing it if you can't say the syllables. I mean, you can to some extent, but the blessing is by saying the syllables. What can we do, people? Can we have a solution, please? Do we not have a prayer book? Is it all the prayer books? Yes, in the prayer books, darling.
There's so many prayer books, I'm not sure. It's the one I do in the morning, but I'm not sure which one it is.
Can we see the prayer books, Bernie? What is it? Hundreds of books up there. Are the daily prayer books? What is
It's not
that?
in the Kurukulla prayer.
Well,
There's version 1 and version 2 of it.
Well, I don't know, bring me one of them and I'll
FBT.
check it out. Just bring me.
No, it's not in there.
It's not in here?
It's
Oh, this is Kurukulla's
No,
prayer.
it's not in that one.
It's not in that one.
Okay, so give me another one then.
It's in the FPMT,
It's a really good practice.
That's the one it's in.
yeah, it's in a retreat, FPMT retreat prayer book.
You got one there? Turn me down. Okay, it must be in these, yeah.
You think it's in the gold one?
There's a,
Yeah.
It's in the retreat prayer book, FPMT retreat
Yeah.
prayer book.
see, it must be in the preliminary prayers. It doesn't list them all. Yeah, it's here. It's in this, it's in the gold one.
Gold one?
You can share them. All you need to have is, I'll lead the visualization. All you need to do is open your eyes and say the syllables. It's not very many. So we can do that. And we put it on the screen for the people there, please. The practice.
This one?
It's on page
16,
15, 15 or something.
Yeah,
In the gold book. So it's on pages 15, 16 and 17, the things you need to recite. Meanwhile, I'll just lead the visualization, okay, have it ready to read. Oh, yeah, 16, it's 16, 16, okay? Ready? On the screen as well?
I don't have a copy of this for the screen.
On the screen,
I don't have a copy of it.
For the people online, it's difficult.
they have to have one, don't
Let me
they?
see. We have.
What can you do?
Here. 16 on the bottom. Yeah.
Okay, I think I have that somewhere.
Okay, good, okay, we'll be fine, just have a little break before we do it. It takes 5 minutes, 7 minutes. Let me talk about speech while Bob's looking. I think we, in our culture, because we don't give much attention to speech, and we certainly don't pay much attention to the mind, because we think it's a secret world that I'm allowed to have what I like and no one knows about it, so I can do what I like. This is actually the most nihilistic you could possibly be. It's a bit like not knowing botany and saying, what's happening? You listening, everybody? It's like saying I can put any seeds in the ground I like as if it's some kind of special activity, because you don't realize that seeds bring fruits. So we don't realize thoughts bring results. That's what's so schizophrenic. We know if you're playing music, you can't just say I can interpret Bach's music any way I like. You know you won't, you'll just play chaos. You know there are rules and laws and you apply them diligently. But we don't think that when it comes to thoughts about happiness and suffering, because we believe the cause of happiness and suffering is out there. It's really quite schizophrenic. I'm not trying to use that word weirdly. It's very, very, very bizarre. So that's your mind. See, Lama Zopa said, this is very shocking, but it's true in what I just said. He says the vast majority of all humans on the planet have absolutely no idea that what goes on in their mind, and he means in relation to happiness and suffering, plays any role at all in their lives. When it comes to math, cooking, music, we absolutely know that everything that goes on in your mind is crucial to be accurate, to become a cook, a carpenter, or a musician, but not when it comes to being a happy or suffering person. That's the simple point of putting it, a simple way. It's very incredible. So if you don't even think the mind counts, we certainly don't think speech counts. We vaguely think that actions as a body matter because you're going to get arrested. You know, even I remember one person, in Australia, there was one person who pretended to be a Tibetan Buddhist nun. She was completely demented, made up stories, made up teachings. She had some kind of gift of the gab, but she was quite delusional, misleading people, pretending. I mean, just like a demented liar. And this woman went to the police to complain about her. And he said, you can't, if she stole $5, we could arrest her, but you can't get arrested for saying crazy words. I mean, maybe now these days abusive speech and things, but because we don't think speech is valuable. But the Buddha's point of karma is very simple, that every thought, every word and every action count, because they are what produce the person we become. That's the best way to put about karma, you know. If we keep saying it like, you know, negative actions bring suffering and positive actions bring happiness, we get panic stricken. Just hear it logically, you know, we produce ourselves. Wow.
So Venerable, where do thoughts come from?
Previous thoughts. That is the answer. There's no other answer. We go back 40 million years, that is the same answer. Does that make sense? Don't like it. So we want a first big bang. We want a first big thought.
No,
You understand? Okay, we've got the thing on the. You've got it yet, Bob.
No, I only have the highest yoga tantra version of it.
I have,
It's slightly
There's no
different.
highest yoga tantric version of it. What are you talking about?
Well, there's
Let me see it. What do you mean? There's no highest tantric version of it. I've never heard of that.
well, it ends with
What?
hung hung pei.
Who cares? Doesn't matter. Put it
Okay.
in.
Okay, I think it.
No, there's no highest tantric version of it. Purification speech. This is. Are you just that? You mean? Okay. What about the dependent arising mantra? Is that there too? This is
No,
fine. This is
that's
good.
not- That's
That's
not there.
speech. That's the two things. But have you got the dependent arising mantra? It should come straight after that. In that book.
No.
Scroll down. It might come there.
No,
You've gotta
it's-
have the
this is
dependent arising
triple
mantra as well.
purification.
What?
This is the triple purification.
No, I understand that.
I screenshot.
Mantra.
Screenshot.
Have you got
Mantras.
dependent arising mantra? If
Yeah,
somebody,
It's not in. It's not in
well,
this.
send it to Bob.
I screenshot it so I can send it to you.
Okay.
Send it to Bob. That'll do for the first one. Fine, Bob. That'll do.
Okay.
Come back to the. We'll do those first. I'll explain to people. Put it on the screen. It's on the screen. Those of you on the screen. Where have you gone? Go
I
back
don't
to
know
it,
where I went.
and you'll find it
Okay.
in there. It's coming soon.
Here it is. No.
Oh, I see that one.
Of the mind, of the speech. Now the speech.
Speech. Here it is.
Here it is. Here. So the first, you see the first two rows. That's the first one. That's the
Yeah.
syllables. And the second lot are the vowels. The second lot of the consonants. But you just don't say the hung hung pair at the end.
No.
Okay. So I'll explain. Don't worry. So you sent him
I sent a screenshot
Okay.
email.
of the dependent arising. Okay, good. So I'm going to give a visualization, and you're just going to open your eyes and recite these syllables, and it's easy enough, okay? But you've got to end with svaha. I'll show you. Okay, purification of speech. So keep it there for now. So now just concentrate, close your eyes, relax your body. And we think if you've taken Hatha Yoga Tantra, you manifest as a deity. If you haven't, you visualize Buddha above your crown. Just visualize Buddha sitting there very comfortably. And we take refuge. We just think, I take refuge in the three jewels. May I become a Buddha to benefit all. Think like that. So now, just imagine, you're just using your creative imagination, okay? Imagine on your tongue, there's a syllable ah. So if you know Sanskrit or Tibetan, you think it, otherwise just, Roman letters, AH, standing upright on your tongue. It turns into a moon disc, like a flat cushion, a white cushion, a moon disc on your tongue. And on top of that, on that moon disk, is a white Om, O-M, standing upright on the white moon disk on your tongue. And it's surrounded by all the white vowels. So clearly we don't know them, so we have to pretend. These Sanskrit syllables standing upright, a whole bunch of them, the syllables going clockwise around the white Om, and they're white syllables with vowels. Just imagine, on your tongue. So then counterclockwise are all the red consonants. Just imagine, counterclockwise around the white syllables, around the Om on the moon disk on your tongue. Very busy, never mind. And then around those clockwise are the Rinpoche calls them the syllables of the dependent related heart mantra, or we might call it the dependent arising mantra. Blue syllables, like the sky, clockwise around the red vowels, around the white red consonants, around the white vowels, all on your tongue. Imagine. So now we're going to imagine hooking the energy of all the blessed speech of all the Buddhas, all the Bodhisattvas, all the holy beings all over the universe. So imagine the 3 light colors going out to all the 10 directions, north, south, east, west, northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest, up and down, going out, hooking the energy of the blessed speech. And what blessed speech means, they talk about for the Buddha is the main gift of the Buddha is his speech. This is a tremendously powerful point. We can't see, if you saw the Buddha for 1,000 years sitting there looking very beautiful, but they don't open their mouth, we will learn nothing. Speech is the most tremendous thing that we have as humans. That's how we help people. And we know in our daily lives, we need speech desperately to even survive, to get things done. So this blessed speech, which is those who've got the power of speech, as Rinpoche says, that comes from 1, it comes from silence. 2, it comes from intentional not saying bad words like lying, bad mouthing behind backs, abusing people, and just rabbiting on. These are the 4 ways we misuse our speech, polluting our own speech and causing everybody else utter misery. So 1, being silent, 2, consciously refraining from these 4 negative speech, and 3, even saying positive words, and even more powerful, saying mantra. This is how you purify your speech, you bless your speech, and you get what they call the power of speech. This is Buddha's gift to the world. So imagine you're hooking all of that energy with the red, white, and blue lights, and it all comes back, the power of the speech of all these holy beings, and comes back and dissolves into the syllables on your tongue, making them like delicious nectar. So happy. So now we recite the vowels first, and as we do, we visualize nectar, white nectar, coming from the syllables, filling our entire body. And first of all, we now imagine it purifies our body. Sickness we've got, heaviness, the difficulties of our body, making the body light and wonderful and healed. But also, crucially, we imagine it purifies all the karmic imprints of any harm we've ever done since beginningless time with our bodies. So happily imagine all of that purified, totally purified by this radiant white nectar filling us as we say the syllables. So we put svaha, the first 2 lines only, and you put svaha at the end. Om, a, I, u, ri, li, e, a, ang, svaha. Om, a, I, u, ri, li, e, o, ang, svaha. Om, a, I, u, ri, li, e, o, ang, svaha. Full of this blissful white nectar. All the negative rubbish of your body gone, disappeared into space. your body light and blissful, and whoever sees you can only get benefit. Can you imagine from this body? You can't possibly harm others now. Imagine that. So now the vowels, okay? Red nectar pours down, fills you completely, and purifies all your inadequacy of speech, the confusion, not knowing what you're saying all the wrong words, not being understood properly, and purifying all the nonsense of the lying. And even if we don't lie, you know what we do? We speculate endlessly because everyone's got opinions. We don't even know that what we're saying is true or not. So this is so bad, you know, we might constantly lie, but we mislead people and confuse ourselves. So all the lying, all the speculating, all the harsh speech to people, all the bad mouthing behind backs causing disharmony, and all the rabbiting on, the useless speech. All of this, you imagine since the beginning of time, especially as humans, of course. When animals have a few sounds, they kind of, you know, but they're not very useful. But humans are the clever ones. So completely purify all of this, full of this radiant red nectar, and causing you to have only blessed speech, such that whoever hears you, the birds, the dogs, the ants, the spirits, they can only be benefited. Even just saying good morning. Can you imagine how special that is? And again, you end with svaha, all the rest of the letters. Ka ka, om ka 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 ganga, cha 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 janya, ta 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 dana, ta ta da dana, pa pa ba ba ma, yada lava, sha 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 haksa, swaha. Forget the hong pep. Oh ka om, the third line. Ka 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 ganga, cha 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 janya, ta 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 dana, ta 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 dana. Pa pa ba ba ma yada la ra sha 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 haksa swaha. Om ka 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 ganga cha 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 janya ta 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 dana ta 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 dana pa pa ba ba ma yada la ra sha 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 haksa swaha. Those two lines of ta-ta, the second line has got little marks on it, a slightly different sound, but I don't know what they are. Sometimes it shows, you know, slightly different sound. So now visualize all this, what did we just do? Oh yeah, the red nectar, that's not completely purified. This radiant red nectar completely filling our speech, totally purified, and we've got the power of speech. Can you imagine? Incredible. So any sound you utter will be clear, appropriate, controlled, useful, beneficial, and truthful. In touch with reality. How amazing. Blissful red nectar filling us. So now is the dependent raised heart mantra, dependent rising, blue like the sky, and this of course is going to purify the mind. So this the nectar pours out from this, fills us completely, and purifies the mind. It purifies the root delusion, the intrinsic belief in the intrinsic I, and then the attachment to get what the I wants, and the panic attack of aversion when it doesn't, and all the other ridiculous dramas disappeared, eradicated by this radiant blue nectar filling us. How amazing. Instantaneously, gone, all the rubbish. Om ye dhamma hetu pabhava hetun te sham tathagata yevadat te sham chayo nirodha evam vadi mahashamana ye swaha. Om ye dhamma hetu pabhava hetun te sham tathagato yevadat te sham chayo nirodha evam vadi mahashamana ye swaha. Om ye dhamma hetu pabhava hetun te sham tathagato yevadat te sham chayo nirodha evam vadi mahashamana yes swaha. Full of this radiant blue nectar, your mind full of wisdom, delusions gone. And you know why they've gone? This is the point from all the discussion we had before, because they're concepts that are not rooted in reality. So when I say, I forget my math, let's say, and I say 1 + 1 is 3. And you say, Robina, don't be silly, it's 2. And I'll go, oh, you're right, 1 + 1 is 2. So the point is this, the first thought is a mistake. It's a thought, it's a real thought, but it's a mistake. So then when you tell me the truth, what happened to the lie? It disappeared like a puff of smoke, and what made it go was seeing the truth. That's how you realize emptiness. That's how you become a Buddha. So imagine wisdom, bliss, nothing left. Amazing. So now, you imagine the dependent related mantra on our tongue, the blue ones, they dissolve into the red consonants on our tongue. The red consonants dissolve into the white vowels. The white vowels dissolve into the Om. The moon disk turns, the moon turns into the Ah. And the Om dissolves into the moon, and the moon turns into the Ah. And that turns into pink-coloured nectar. Can you imagine? On your tongue. And dissolves into your tongue. And they say it makes it indestructible. Your tongue is like, says, like heavy. So now you think your tongue becomes indestructible and nothing can harm it. Nothing can take away the virtue of your words, the power of truth. And whoever hears your words, their emotional afflictions will be calmed, and you'll be able to help human beings. It's incredible. And this is speech, this is doable. Forget your mind, we're not discussing the mind yet. The speech and the body, already incredible. How amazing. You can benefit sentient beings. And we dedicate. Little prayer at the end. I'll just say it. May my tongue have all the power of the ones gone to bliss, by the power manifesting from these glorified words. May all sentient beings be subdued. May all suffering be immediately purified. And whatever words I say, may all these meanings be accomplished instantly. I tell you, I just love that practice. And there's a very short one, it's in the book, but you do it a bit longer, you know. Speech is tremendous, people. If we can control our speech every day, your life will already be transformed. I promise you. It's not joking. Then you'll be able to work on your mind more easily. You know, that's the point. Okay, that's it. Done. Then you help the dying people will be able to benefit from you, okay? Then you help the ant, the dog, the pussycat, the mummy. That's it. So we dedicate all these days we've been together. Anything useful that we've all heard, including me, because I've been listening too, I promise. The seeds we planted, be so happy, and maybe continue on our path, never giving up with enthusiasm, for our sake and the sake of sentient beings. Jung Chub, Sem Chub Rinpoche. Can we put the prayers up, please? Maybe we do a few prayers together. Let's do a few prayers. I'm a bit lazy with prayers. I just like to say the thoughts. Keep it simple. Okay. Any old prayers that you have up there. And we should say at least one of the long life prayers, the requesting prayer for His Holiness. Long life prayer for His Holiness, but the requesting prayer for Lama Zopa to come back. His Holiness's prayer. We'll say that. Well,
Sorry, I didn't have it set up.
what? Okay, good. Let's just make it a bit bigger. Thank you. No, what's this one?
His Holiness's
Long life prayer. Let's go. We'll say that one. But you haven't got the version Rinpoche wrote.
Yeah.
You never said that one here.
The long life prayer?
No, there's a prayer that Rinpoche wrote several years ago, a short 4-line one. For His Holiness. You haven't got that. It's a great pity. They don't filter down. Rinpoche's instructions often don't filter. Deborah, well, how come you're a student of Lama Zopa's? How come I haven't filtered down to the sentence? Never mind, doesn't matter. We'll say the other one. But Rinpoche's instructions often don't filter down to all the sentences. It's a great pity.
Where?
Never mind. We'll do this one for now.
The second one, the prayer that spontaneously fulfills all wishes?
There's one that Rinpoche wrote a few years ago, a different prayer. Instead of the land of snows, it's everywhere sort of thing. But never mind that, we'll do the other one, okay? Go back before that, Bob.
the bottom of the
That one.
page. Yep.
In the snow mountains,
In
encircled land, source of every benefit and joy.
Lord,
Where's the next one? I can't see the words.
sorry.
Joy. Where's the rest of it? May
top-
Lord Tenzin Gyatso
Teaching
Chenrezig
Chenrezig
remain in life till
samsara
samsara
is
ends. Okay, that's good. And now get the prayer for returning of Lama Zopa by Dalai Lama, please.
This one here. Yeah, this one.
Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Lozang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer, this aspiration, here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teaching through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for loving mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. Such a great loss. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of three jewels, and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of reincarnation swiftly be in glory for fortunate disciples. So may, Lama Ursel, Lama Yeshu's reincarnation live long, and may precious Geshe-la live long, long, long. He lost him, I heard, but he kept going, didn't he? Pretty amazing. I saw him in New York, he looked so fit. He looked fitter than normal, but I hear he's all pulled together by wires. It's not all metal or something, is he? Is he?
Yeah.
Is it really? Much metal? Really?
Fine.
Amazing. And may he live a long life for all of us. And may we live a long life, and we're going to be useful. If we're not, you might as well die now, okay? Don't waste your life. Don't waste other people's lives. Drop dead. But be useful. All right? Thank you. That'll do. Thank you, people. See you somewhere in the moon or in the sky, like Lama Yeshe says. And I thank you for having me.